Today we're going to be the brotherest we've ever been, and Aaron's going to tell me what he thinks of my ruined car. I'm Justin.
And I'm Aaron.
And this is Husman Bros. And before we go too much further, please subscribe for more great content like this. So if you're a fan of the channel, you saw that I took a bunch of stuff out of my car not too long ago.
He screwed up. He can no longer off-road in this vehicle. Two-wheel drive only, stuck in the mud.
I wasn't going to off-road anyway. Now, I have driven this for a couple weeks since we did it, and I love it. A lot of you guys ask me why, and I'm going to answer that question right now. Because I could. I bought this car to mess around with, and after Rennline reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in this? I said, absolutely, why not? So I love it. I wouldn't say I'm a skilled enough driver to be able to tell it's 80 pounds lighter, but it certainly feels very, very different.
Around town, we know a few people who have had Carrera 4s, who've had 996 4s, and I seem to hear the same thing over and over again. Most of them don't like the 4 because it takes too much power away from the back to put it in the front.
Right.
And from what I understand, some people like the squirreliness that you get out of having a little less traction control when you're going around some of the turns, driving around town at least.
Well, you know, it's not any squirrelier than it was before. I'm not driving this car in the rain for the most part anyway, and it just feels lighter. I agree. There have been a lot of people that said, you know, you could have bought a 2. A 2 wasn't available when I was looking for it. This was what was available. So I'm going to let Aaron and cousin Rob drive this today and give me their impressions of how ruined this car is.
All right, it's time to go for a drive. I'll give you guys my thoughts. Let's check it out. All right, let's get out on the road. Just getting through the parking lot now. My first impression though, I can feel the steering is lighter. It is definitively lighter than it is in my car. So if you guys don't know, I drive the same car, only better. Mine is the 996.2, it's a C4, and I have not done the conversion yet. So I still have all-wheel drive. Now that Justin has done his conversion, I'm trying to see what the difference is and see if I can tell any kind of difference. Now, as Justin tells some people about this, their initial thought is that he ruined the car. I can't agree with him just yet because I do need to drive it to confirm. So that's what we're gonna do. That's the big difference I can tell right now. It really is the steering, the level of steering. It just feels lighter on the steering wheel. I mean, today is a dry day, so it's not like there's anything out on the road to be slick or that I really need the kind of traction control that you get out of all-wheel drive. I'll try and really push it on this next turn and see if I can feel anything different while I try not to wreck Justin's car. I didn't really do much. We're in a, I don't know, residential, commercial, but certainly not a high-speed area that I want to go zipping around in. So I'm not on a track. I can't really put it through its paces. So we're just going to have to see what we can see on the roads that we've got available for us. Now, obviously, as you know, this is a 911. It's a rear-engine car, so it still has a lot of weight over the back wheels. So it's not like we're really going to be able to kick out the back end a whole lot just because we don't have control on the front end. You know, Justin's car is the first generation of the 996. It has slightly less horsepower. It's got a slightly smaller engine than the 996.2. Originally, when I drove Justin's car, I did not feel like it had quite the pickup that my 996.2 has. I can say now, I feel differently about it. I can feel a difference in the power. It feels a bit quicker. It feels a bit more like the performance I get out of mine than it did before the conversion. So as I'm driving it for the first time and trying to figure out what the differences are, that is something I definitely notice here. It's got a little bit more responsiveness than I had felt previously when driving it. So that's interesting. I had heard that there was a difference in power by making the conversion, and I'm feeling it now and wondering if I should do it to mine. I can feel a little bit more peppiness out of it, but I think the biggest, most noticeable difference is responsiveness of the steering. Really the weight on the steering wheel is the big thing that you can really feel. Mine feels a lot tighter than this, a lot heavier than this. And so I think that is a difference that I'm sensing between the two-wheel conversion versus the base Carrera 4. We also have with us today cousin Rob. He helped with the install for this conversion, and he's here today. He hasn't driven a 4 in a while, so he went and drove mine, and we're gonna go back and we're gonna let him drive this and see what thoughts he has about the difference between the 4 and the converted into 2. So let's go see what Rob has to say, and then we'll tell Justin what we really think about his car.
Hi everyone, it's cousin Rob here. You know, I was really involved in the conversion of this car from 4-wheel drive to 2-wheel drive, but I haven't had a chance to drive it yet. So I thought it'd be a good comparison to drive this car for a few miles and then drive Aaron's car for a few miles. His car is still a Carrera 4, so it still has the 4-wheel drive system intact. And I thought when we were done, I would give you some of my comments and thoughts on what the feeling is between 2 and 4-wheel drive. Now, we are in city streets. 1, 2, we're not, near a racetrack, so we cannot really exercise these cars, to their fullest potential. But I think we can give you a pretty good seat of the pant understanding of where this car is at, based upon just driving it around locally. So first of all, I will tell you that the steering in the Carrera 4 is much heavier. It's really, okay, now everything's relative, right? So when I say it's an effort compared to this. This has a very playful feel to it, right? On the Carrera 4, you really can feel that you need to put a little bit of kind of muscle into it to get the car to move. What that's gonna mean though, in between the two cars is a 2-wheel drive car is always gonna feel more playful, even if it's a front-wheel drive car or a rear-wheel drive car, because you don't have that additional parasitic drag on the drivetrain. Having an addition, having a transaxle, the additional torque tube, etc. That adds a lot of weight and a lot of complexity to the overall feeling of how you're going to drive one of these cars. I can tell you that in low speed, it's quite a bit easier to steer the Carrera 2 versus the 4. But we'll see here in just a moment when we get up to some speed, kind of what it really feels like. I can tell you right now, the car is quite a bit more playful. It doesn't take nearly as much steering effort as it does with the Carrera 4. So we're going to go through a couple of corners a little bit quicker, and I can just tell you the car has a much more supple feel to it than the Carrera 4. I can really feel that it's a lot more playful. I can get a lot more tuning into the corner compared to what I can do with the 4. So it's a lot more, I'd say, a lot more fun. Also, the engine's more rev happy, right? So I'm able to downshift and heel and toe the car much smoother than on Aaron's car. But admittedly, his car is an e-throttle and this is still a cable, so it's still that raw physical connection between the cable and all the throttle bodies for the fuel injection system. This is fun. I'm having more fun driving this than I am the Carrera 4. Sorry, Aaron. Just even driving, we're driving, at a reasonable speed on the road, and just the steering feel it's easier. As I mentioned a moment ago, I felt like I had to muscle that 4-wheel drive, the 4-wheel system. But here's the deal. You're always going to adapt to the car that you have. So if you have a Carrera 4 or a 4-wheel drive vehicle, you're going to adapt to the fact that there's a little bit heavier steering feel. It takes a little bit more, muscle. Keep in mind, we're talking about degrees here on how you're going to pilot and position the car. With a 2-wheel drive car, there's less weight, and you're going to feel that. So why would you want a Carrera 4 or a 4-wheel drive car? Safety for one. A 4-wheel drive car, I think, is inherently safer than a 2-wheel drive car. The car tends to turn in a particular arc. There's less chance for snap oversteer or understeer. It's harder to make a 4-wheel drive car slide because we have those 2 extra driven wheels. But in inclement weather, snow, on the occasion you have to drive in gravel, 4-wheel drive is definitely going to be the better, safer choice. If you want to drive switchback roads, tight mountain twisty roads, oh yeah, 2-wheel drive is the way to go. And I think that you will definitely feel the difference when you get behind the wheel and start really piloting the 2 cars. So once again, just lighter, more playful steering with 2-wheel compared to 4-wheel drive. Driving them back to back, you can really tell the difference. I think if you drive one all the time, you may never notice. You may never notice the fact that it takes a little bit more steering effort with a 4-wheel drive versus a 2-wheel drive. But here, for sure, you can tell a pretty huge difference. I think if you drive depending upon what car you drive, you may never notice it. You may never notice the fact that it takes extra steering effort because that's what your muscle memory tells you and you're used to it. But when you have a chance to drive the cars back to back, it's a very big difference. I mean, just the way you can, even the feeling here, just swaying the car back and forth, takes very little input into the steering to make the car do what you want it to do. And that's, I think, the big difference is that a two-wheel drive always going to be more playful than a four-wheel drive. And we're back.
Now we've both driven it. So you drove mine and I drove mine here. So we both have recent experience in the 4 and now a little bit of experience in the 2. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's a little bit night and day. One of the things I noticed on the four-wheel drive, the Carrera 4, is the steering's much heavier. It takes more effort to steer into a corner, even at low speed. One thing I will say though is that once it did take a set in the corner, it was fairly planted. It didn't require as much course correction. The difference is, I think a Carrera 4 is a great option if it's your only car and you're going to be driving it in rain, maybe occasionally snow. Oh, God forbid you should ever drive it in gravel, but there's going to be those occasions when you might do that. Carrera 4 is really a great option. The 2, I would just classify it straight up very playful. The steering effort is very light and nimble. I was able to make mid-course corner corrections on a couple of sweepers, very easily, and the car just felt more alive in my hands. And I'd say really alive and playful are the two things I would come up with.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference for me, I think, was that weight in the steering wheel and how much flow you had in that steering wheel versus on mine, it does feel very tight, which I do like tight steering, but having driven this, I can see the benefit of having it be a little looser. I did feel like there was more power coming out of this one. I felt like this was peppier. It had a better takeoff than it did when it was four-wheel drive.
Well, keep in mind, we've lost a lot of weight out of the front, somewhere around 80 pounds. And there's also the parasitic draw of the drivetrain up front. So that really does impact a bit how this car feels, or a four-wheel drive feels, versus a two-wheel drive. We've taken out 80 pounds out of the front of the car. It's for sure going to be a little peppier, and it's going to be more nimble, responsive, playful, really able to place it.
Even though this car has a slightly smaller motor than that one does.
Correct, but keep in mind, less 80 pounds. And less that parasitic draw of the front drivetrain. There's going to be a big difference.
So I guess the only thing left to do now is find a track, and we'll match them up side by side and see who can really perform. But Justin's not as good a driver as me, so it'll be me.
So you've got a four-wheel drive version of the Porsche Carrera. Would you do this conversion to yours?
I'm not going to say no, but I can't say yes. I was intrigued by driving this. I am curious with him getting more power now, having removed the front wheel of the four-wheel drive or the all-wheel drive. I wonder how much more power, how much more pep I can get out of my car as well. Because I started faster, but now I think he's caught up a little bit.
No, fair enough. I think the big difference is it comes down to personal preference. So if you're looking to buy a Porsche and it's going to be your only car, you can't go wrong with a Carrera 4. It gives you a very planted, very secure, stable ride, especially in inclement weather. We've seen videos of folks happily and capably driving their Porsche Carrera 4s in the snow. So we know it can do it. Would I do it if it was my car? I don't know. I think that's something that at the end of the day that Justin's going to say, was it worth it? Yes or no? Aaron, what do you think?
Well, here's the thing about the Carrera 4s, because a lot of Porsche drivers really don't think as highly of the Carrera 4s because they don't want the all-wheel drive. So the beauty is you can actually pick up a Carrera 4 for less money than you can pick up a Carrera 2. And if you're handy and you got a couple of good friends, you can convert it to a two-wheel drive for maybe less than it would cost to get yourself into a Carrera 2.
The other great thing about this conversion that we did, it's reversible. You get to the point you think, I don't really like it, I don't get it, or I like that more stable feel. You can reverse it and put the drivetrain right back in.
But not even as painful as a vasectomy, so what do you know? There you go. But some people asked Justin, when he said he was going to do this, Why are you gonna do that? It's dumb. Why would you do that? That's dumb. Why don't you just buy a Carrera 2? And the answer is because Justin does dumb stuff. So why don't you leave a comment down below and tell us what dumb things he should do to this car next, and come back and watch more videos to see what he does.
Now wait a minute, don't you mean more dumb things that Cousin Rob can probably do to the car, right?
That's also true.
I'm the wrenching here.
Exactly. Thank you for watching. Leave some comments, tell us what you like, and come back and see us next time.